Hot black coffee rippled against the ceramic mug, its searing heat stinging my fingertips, yet a chill far colder than the brew settled deep in my bones. I stood in the center of my home's open-concept kitchen, behind me a full marble bar counter still holding the imported champagne my fiancé Elias had delivered the day before. This space ought to have brimmed with the tender excitement of wedding preparations, yet it had devolved into a tribunal where my own mother and younger sister colluded to frame me. Caroline, my sister, stared fixedly at Elias, raw jealousy and malice blazing in her eyes. Her shrill voice cut through the silence, each word driving a blade into my chest. "Don't let her soft act fool you, Elias. Leah only chased you for your money and connections, she never loved you one bit." Before I could utter a word, my mother Margaret curled a cold, unforgiving smile, a grin I'd carried in my memory for 9 long years. It was the exact look she'd worn when she destroyed every youthful dream I'd held, pushing me into despair all those years ago. She stepped forward, her gaze locked hard on Elias, lowering her voice to drop a slanderous accusation powerful enough to ruin our engagement. "Dig deeper. She's hidden another man for 9 years, tangled up with him all this time. She only latched onto you to fund her secret lover." Silence crashed over the room. Elias's fingers tightened at his sides, no flicker of shock or doubt crossing his face, only quiet restraint, built up over 4 months of gathering proof. "I am Leah Hamilton, 31 years old." I said nothing in my own defense, never raising my voice, merely clutching the coffee mug tight in my palms. Nothing stung more bitterly than this. Blood relatives who were supposed to be my strongest support had spent every waking moment plotting to destroy the single glimmer of hope I'd fought 9 years to grasp. Margaret and Caroline thought my years of silence made me an easy target, convinced baseless rumors would tear my wedding apart. But they overlooked 2 critical truths. First, Elias had spent 4 months hiring lawyers and private investigators to compile a complete dossier, audio recordings, bank transfer slips, witness statements documenting every scheme they'd woven against me. Second, the mysterious man they accused me of hiding was merely an old friend who'd witnessed my suffering 9 years prior, waiting patiently for the day he could step forward and expose their cruelty. They'd torn down the wall of silence I'd clung to for nearly a decade, and this kitchen showdown was only the start of their ruin. I huffed a bitter laugh, 9 years of suppressed grief and exhaustion surging in my chest. To understand this kitchen confrontation, we had to go back to the suffocating afternoon 9 years prior. I was only 22 then, standing alone inside a talent agency on Madison Avenue when Margaret planted herself firmly in front of me, dictating every detail of my life without room for argument. My career, romantic relationships, finances, and marriage were all hers to control. Any resistance would bring endless humiliation and punishment. Today, I run Hamilton Interior Design, a studio tucked on a prime corner lot in the Gulch neighborhood of Nashville. 6 senior designers work under my roof, and our client waitlist stays perpetually full. Most of my high-end clientele traced back to a random phone call in 2023, the wife of a Nashville Predators forward, who referred countless local celebrities and wealthy business owners to my firm. Last year alone, the studio grossed over $1.2 million. After covering staff salaries, rent, and material costs, my personal net income was more than enough to break free from my family's financial grip. Yet Margaret and Caroline remained completely oblivious. For 9 years, I'd deliberately hidden the scale of my success, downplaying my income and achievements to spare myself their endless demands and manipulation. I first met Elias at a Nashville Children's Hospital charity gala last March. Unlike the wealthy attendees swarming the room, he showed no interest in grilling me about my background or earnings. Instead, he spent 40 minutes chatting with me about Persian hand-woven rugs, their weaving techniques, color palettes, and textures. Only after our lengthy conversation did he pause to ask my name. He'd casually mentioned working in strategic consulting, and I'd assumed he was an average corporate worker. As we grew closer, I learned he owned a network of high-end consulting firms across Nashville and Atlanta. The two major clients who had kick-started my luxury design roster had been his longtime business associates, sent to me on his recommendation. On September 19th, at a lakeside wooden cabin outside Asheville, Elias knelt on the porch as twilight carried pine-scented wind through the trees and proposed. I burst into tears for 10 seconds, all 9 years of buried sorrow tangled with the joy of finally finding someone worthy of my love, then broke out laughing alongside him. We'd agreed to keep our engagement quiet for 2 weeks, planning to break the news gently to my mother and sister at the right time. We never imagined they'd fabricate vicious lies and turn hostile before we could share our happiness. 9 years prior, fresh out of design school at 22, I held 2 job offers. One was a full-time role at a local Nashville design firm, promising hands-on experience and a chance to build my professional reputation. The other was a dead-end clerical position Margaret had secured through a distant relative, fixed hours, static pay, no room for growth. I'd invited her to the Madison Avenue talent agency to talk it through, laying both letters on the table, but Margaret crumpled the design firm's offer in one fist and hurled it straight at my face. Shreds of paper stuck to my blouse as I froze, utterly stunned by my own mother's rage. "Quit daydreaming, Leah," Margaret crossed her arms, staring down at me with contempt. "Interior design is a worthless trade, running to construction sites, dealing with laborers, parading yourself in public. Clerical work is steady and respectable, with family connections to watch over you. That's the proper path for a young woman." I knelt to smooth the crumpled paper, pleading gently. "This is the degree I spent 4 years studying. I love this work, and this firm's lead designer is highly respected in the industry. There's so much room to grow long-term. I don't want to waste my life stuck in repetitive office administration. Can passion pay the bills?" Margaret scoffed, raising her voice loud enough for every other applicant in the office to stare. "Caroline's going to marry a rich man one day. All our savings are set aside for her dowry. The erratic money you'd make as a designer won't help our family at all. A steady monthly salary as a clerk means most of your paycheck can go to supporting her. That's your responsibility as the older sister." Caroline had just graduated high school at 19, spending every day shopping and socializing without a single thought of finding work. Margaret fully expected me to sacrifice my entire future to fund her frivolous lifestyle. My life isn't meant to exist solely for Caroline. I gripped the offer letter tight, speaking up for the first time to defy her. "I deserve a life of my own. I won't be trapped in the future you've mapped out for me." That single sentence ignited her fury. She lunged forward, seizing my wrist hard enough for her fingernails to dig into my skin, sharp pain shooting up my arm. "You think you're too good to listen now that you've gone to college?" Her voice dropped to a menacing growl. "I control your life as long as I draw breath. If you turn down that clerk job, I'll destroy every opportunity you have. Your design professors are old acquaintances of mine. I'll make sure no studio hires you. I'll even reach out to every classmate to get you ostracized." I stared at the red marks blooming on my wrist, overwhelmed by helplessness. Fresh out of school, I had no steady income or place to live, and she knew exactly how to weaponize my fear of losing everything I'd worked for. A staff member tried to intervene, but Margaret silenced them with a single vicious glare. She released my wrist, tossing out the slander that would haunt me for nearly a decade. "This obsession with running around as a designer can only mean you're seeing some man behind our backs, trying to escape your family. Don't think I can't see right through you." No romantic partner existed in my life back then. I only focused on school and internships. Yet her baseless accusation pierced me like ice. "That's not true." My voice trembled, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. "You know what you've been up to." Margaret smoothed her coat, wearing that cold smile I'd never forget. "Here's your ultimatum. Take the clerk position and hand over most of your paycheck to Caroline every month, or I'll spread rumors about your immoral conduct until no one will give you a chance." With that, she turned and walked out of the agency, leaving me surrounded by crumpled paper and the pitying, judgmental stares of passers-by. I stood on the sidewalk outside Madison Avenue for 2 full hours as cold autumn winds swept fallen leaves against my calves. Torn between my dream and her threats, I weighed my options. I barely had enough savings to cover 2 months of rent, and a smear campaign would ruin my chance to break into design right after graduation. Reluctantly, I agreed to take the clerical job, yet silently resolved to build my own wealth and independence, so I could one day cut free entirely from her control. Back home, Margaret told Caroline everything. My sister lounged on the living room sofa munching imported fruit, her tone dripping with schadenfreude. "Stop chasing impossible fantasies, sis. Mum only wants what's best for you. Besides, your money belongs to me anyway, for designer bags and jewelry. When I marry a millionaire, I might even throw you a bone." I ignored her taunts and retreated to my cramped spare bedroom, swallowing all my grief alone. Thus began my double life. Every weekday, I showed up to the clerical job and surrendered most of my wages to my mother. Every night and weekend, I took freelance design commissions, drafting floor plans until 2 or 3 in the morning and rushing between material suppliers to build a private client base. Chronic sleep deprivation left me pale with permanent dark circles under my eyes. Margaret and Caroline only saw my regular monthly cash handouts, oblivious to the late-night light burning in my bedroom and the client network I was quietly building. Whenever Caroline begged me for money for new luxury goods, Margaret would drag out the same old threats from Madison Avenue, calling me selfish and hinting I was hiding a secret lover if I hesitated to pay. With time, I learned to stay silent. Arguments and explanations felt futile. I understood words could never overpower their greed, only financial independence could break their chains. As my freelance earnings far outstripped my clerical salary, I quit the office job and leased a small corner storefront in the Gulch to launch my design studio. To avoid endless harassment and financial demands, I lied about my business's scale and profit, claiming I only took tiny low-budget projects to scrape by. The pair believed me, and while they still asked for money constantly, their demands were less extreme, granting me space to grow. I bore every startup hardship alone. Renovations, equipment, staff payroll, marketing, every expense required tight budgeting. Multiple times, cash flow dried up, forcing me to mortgage my apartment to keep the studio afloat. I tossed and turned through sleepless nights, never breathing a word of my struggles to my family. When Margaret called asking for money, I claimed business was slow and revenue scarce. Caroline would fly into fits of anger, calling me cheap, while Margaret repeatedly visited my studio to pressure me for more cash, dredging up the 9-year-old rumor of a hidden man to shame me into compliance. I endured every insult without pushback, clinging to the hope that one day I'd marry and escape their toxicity for good. That hope arrived last March at the charity gala. Surrounded by wealthy guests fixated on assets and social status, Elias alone zeroed in on the design sketches tucked in my bag. He pointed out a rare 19th-century Iranian rug pattern in my vintage American interior draft, launching our hour-long conversation about antique textiles. No one in the industry had ever cared so deeply about the fine details of my craft, and talking with him felt unburdened, completely free of calculation. "I'm Elias Cast, in strategic consulting," he apologized for rambling about rugs so long before introducing himself. "Leah Hamilton, interior designer," I replied, shaking his hand, and for the first time in years, I felt a quiet sense of safety settle over me. We spent more time together afterward, visiting antique furniture galleries and fabric warehouses. He listened intently to every design concept I shared, never prying into my family or finances. Half a year into our relationship, I discovered his true business reach. The 2 elite clients who'd put my studio on the map had been his business partners, sent to work with me at his recommendation. I realized then he'd sought my company purely out of admiration for my art, not for professional gain. On that lakeside Asheville porch in mid-September, Elias talked of our future home filled with vintage fabrics and greenery before dropping to one knee, pulling out a simple platinum ring set with a cool aquamarine stone that matched my preference for muted, cold-toned decor. You've carried every hardship alone for 9 years. Let me shield you from the storm for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me? Those words unraveled all my suppressed pain. I cried for 10 seconds, then laughed through my tears and nodded wildly. The maple leaves drifted down around us that evening, marking the first moment in 9 years I truly believed happiness was possible. We resolved to hide our engagement temporarily, hoping to break the news gently to Margaret and Caroline. Yet Caroline grew suspicious when I began going out more often in high spirits. She tailed my car and spotted Elias and me shopping for wedding decor, catching sight of his custom-tailored suits and luxury vehicle. Consumed by envy, she rushed home to Margaret, and the two plotted all night long. They never once considered congratulating me, only how to split us apart and extort money from Elias. Caroline seethed with resentment over my kind, wealthy fiancé, while Margaret planned to demand an enormous dowry to fund Caroline's lavish lifestyle. If I refused their demands, they would spread the same slander they'd used against me for 9 years to cancel the wedding. They recycled their two-core lies, that I only wanted Elias for wealth, and that I'd kept a secret lover for nearly a decade, even fabricating a backstory tying the rumor back to my 22-year-old defiance at the talent agency. Fully convinced I would retreat into silence as always, they staged the kitchen ambush, certain their lies would drive Elias away. But they overlooked 2 critical details. First, Elias had suspected their scheming the moment Caroline began stalking me and Margaret dug into his finances. Over 4 months, he hired private investigators and lawyers to gather irrefutable evidence, audio recordings of their late-night plotting, surveillance footage of Caroline's stalking, witness statements proving their character assassination, and years of bank records documenting their non-stop financial extortion. Second, the mysterious 9-year lover they invented was merely Samuel Gray, a lawyer who'd witnessed Margaret's attack at the Madison Avenue agency all those years ago. He'd handed me his contact information back then, offering legal support if Margaret ever continued harassing me. For 9 years, we'd only maintained a platonic friendship, with him providing occasional business legal advice, yet Margaret, spotting his name in my phone, twisted our bond into a salacious affair. Samuel had waited patiently for me to break free from my family's control, and upon hearing their public slander that afternoon, he'd driven straight to my villa, waiting outside to testify on my command. Back in the kitchen, Margaret reached for my arm, confident her lies had landed. Elias stepped instantly between us, gently but firmly blocking her hand, his posture protective yet composed. Before you spread more falsehoods about Leah, I suggest you examine these documents. He unzipped his briefcase and laid a stack of bound papers on the marble bar, sliding an audio player to the top. When he pressed play, their overnight plotting echoed clearly through the room. Elias is loaded, Caroline's voice crackled through the speaker. We need to demand a massive dowry once Leah marries him, all for my sports car and designer bags. Rest easy, Margaret responded. Today we'll accuse her of hiding another man. Once Elias doubts her, the wedding's off. He'll pay us compensation to quiet the rumors, and every cent goes to you. Leah doesn't deserve a good life. I want them to split up entirely, Caroline snapped. Why should she get such a perfect man? I'll humiliate her in front of him today. The recording cut off, and silence blanketed the kitchen. Margaret's face drained of color, Caroline trembling where she stood. That's edited fabrication. Margaret shrieked, trying to discredit the evidence. Elias raised an eyebrow, sliding surveillance photographs across the counter. These show Caroline tailing us for 3 straight days, street camera footage backs it up, and our downstairs neighbor will testify to your overnight plotting. Here are 5 years of bank records proving you've extorted thousands of dollars from Leah every few months, all labeled Caroline's clothing and jewelry. Caroline flinched, hiding behind Margaret as she scanned the rows of transaction slips. Still refusing to concede defeat, Margaret clung to her original lie. The affair with Samuel is undeniable. She's hidden him for 9 years. The front door of the villa creaked open mid-sentence, a calm male voice echoing into the kitchen. I can clarify every detail of what happened 9 years ago at Madison Avenue's talent agency. We all turned to see Samuel step into the room in a tailored black suit, holding a signed witness statement. Margaret reeled backward, tripping against a cabinet and sending ceramic dishes clattering to the counter. Caroline clamped a hand over her mouth, silencing all further slander. Samuel laid his testimony beside the audio recorder, his gaze steady on Margaret. On June 12, 9 years ago, I watched you crumple Leah's designed job offer, dig your fingernails into her wrist, and falsely accuse her of carrying on an affair to force her into clerical work to fund Caroline. The agency staff will corroborate every word. Leah and I have shared nothing more than a professional, platonic friendship for 9 years. You've repeatedly spread malicious lies about our relationship, which constitutes defamation. Margaret's lips stammered uselessly, all her usual cruelty evaporating. Elias stepped forward, outlining legal action. We have full documentation of your public slander, stalking, and years of financial coercion. If you refuse to issue a formal public apology, we will file a civil lawsuit immediately. Caroline's eyes welled with tears as the full weight of their predicament crashed over her, turning to Margaret for rescue. But her mother was too consumed by panic to shield her. I set down my coffee mug, resting it softly on the marble counter. 9 years of exhaustion, grief, and disappointment rose to the surface as I spoke in a quiet, unwavering tone. For 9 years, I never asked you for a single cent. I built this studio from the ground up, earning over $1 million annually, yet I hid my success to avoid endless demands and slander. I stayed silent, hoping compromise would buy peace, but you only grew more jealous and manipulative. I fell for Elias for his respect of my career and acceptance of my past, not his wealth. Samuel was only a kind stranger who aided me 9 years ago, weaponized by you to destroy my happiness. You crossed the line with this kitchen confrontation. Choose one, apologize to me sincerely here and now, or we resolve this in court. Margaret's fists clenched, torn between wounded pride and fear of legal penalties. She'd never imagined the quiet, compliant daughter she'd controlled for so long would stand before her with a mountain of evidence, supported by a loving partner and loyal witness. Mom, just apologize, Caroline whispered, tugging her sleeve. We'll lose if this goes to trial. Margaret roughly shook her off, glowering at me. I gave you life and raised you, how dare you threaten legal action over a few harsh words? Blood ties do not grant you the right to abuse and defame me without consequence, Samuel interjected evenly. Kinship does not erase the emotional harm from your years of exploitation and slander. The law will not excuse your behavior simply because you are mother and daughter. Elias wrapped a comforting arm around my shoulders. Do not worry. Whatever choice they make, I will stand beside you through every legal step. No more suffering alone. His gentle touch unlocked the flood of suppressed tension inside me. I was no longer the terrified 22-year-old girl on that Madison Avenue sidewalk. I had a thriving business, a loyal partner, and a friend ready to testify on my behalf. Margaret stared at the recordings, photos, bank slips, and witness statements spread across the counter for several long minutes, finally surrendering to the inevitable. Her apology was cold and resentful, spoken through gritted teeth. I'm sorry I made false accusations earlier. Caroline mumbled a hollow apology as well, staring at the floor. I'm sorry for letting jealousy make me spread lies about you, sis. It was a performative, insincere surrender, motivated solely by fear of litigation, not remorse. I knew their envy and greed would linger long after this day. Elias leaned in to whisper a plan in my ear. I will have our lawyer draft a restraining agreement to ban further harassment or slander. Any future attempts to extort money or damage your reputation will result in immediate legal proceedings. Samuel nodded in agreement. I can oversee all legal paperwork to block any future harassment attempts. I nodded, turning my gaze away from the two women without another word. For 9 years I'd softened my stance out of loyalty to our blood bond, only rewarded with escalating harm. I would never sacrifice my peace for a hollow sense of family again. Margaret's eyes drifted to the unopened champagne gift set on the bar, already plotting to beg for the bottle and demand a large dowry to recoup her losses. Before she could speak, Elias gathered all evidence back into his briefcase and delivered a clear eviction notice. This conversation ends here. Our legal team will reach out to you to finalize the apology agreement. Do not return to this villa without prior permission. Margaret opened her mouth to argue, but Samuel stepped forward, calm yet firm. If you continue lingering or arguing, we will call property security to escort you out. With no other option, the pair trudged toward the front door. Caroline shot me a venomous glare over her shoulder as she left, silent proof their conflict was far from finished. The moment the front door slammed shut, the suffocating tension in the house lifted. Elias pulled me into a tight embrace, rubbing slow, soothing circles on my back. It's all over now. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Samuel retreated to the living room couch to give us privacy, waiting to review legal next steps once I'd calmed down. Buried in Elias's arms, I replayed 9 years of suffering, the crumpled job offer, endless late nights drafting designs, non-stop cash demands, and fabricated rumors. While relief lingered, a heavy weariness settled over me. You should have told me about all this sooner, Elias murmured against my hair, his voice thick with sympathy. You never needed to carry this weight by yourself. I didn't want to drag you into my messy family conflicts, I whispered, clutching the fabric of his suit jacket. I never thought they'd go so far as to sabotage our engagement with outright lies. They underestimated your strength, and they underestimated how fiercely I will protect you. He brushed a stray tear from my cheek. You built a successful studio with your own hands, and you deserve unconditional care. I will never let anyone hurt you again. After a few minutes to collect myself, I joined Samuel in the living room to outline our legal strategy. First, Margaret and Caroline would be required to sign a formal written apology and retract all slander among our shared social circle to repair my reputation. Second, a binding legal agreement would ban all future extortion, stalking, and defamation, with steep financial penalties for violations. Third, all evidence would be securely archived for future use if they retaliated. Samuel jotted every detail into his notebook, walking me through the legal definitions of verbal defamation and financial coercion. The audio and witness testimony from today's kitchen confrontation creates an airtight verbal defamation case. We can also pursue partial repayment for funds extorted under emotional duress over the years. Elias clarified our priorities. We will not demand full reimbursement of every small payment you sent them. Our only goal is to secure a permanent cease to their harassment. We will reject all dowry requests outright. We will plan our wedding without their involvement, and no large financial transfers will be made to them ever again. I added timelines and specific incidents to strengthen our evidence chain as we talked for nearly an hour. The doorbell suddenly chimed, and I tensed, fearing Margaret and Caroline had returned to argue. Elias checked the video doorbell camera, revealing Olivia, my studio's lead designer, clutching a stack of new interior renderings. He unlocked the front door to let her inside. Leah, I brought the final drafts for the $1 million estate renovation, Olivia said, glancing at the scattered legal documents and recording equipment spread across the room. Is everything all right? I spotted a woman's scarf left on your front steps. I summarized the kitchen altercation, and Olivia's face twisted with anger. You've supported them non-stop for years while building your business alone. For them to slander you like this is unforgivable. This new client project is huge, and they've already referred 3 more wealthy property owners to us. We're projecting a 30% increase in orders next year. She unrolled the architectural drawings across the coffee table, shifting our focus back to design work. Elias leaned over to discuss vintage rug pairings, while Samuel finalized our legal checklist and Olivia reviewed studio growth plans. The atmosphere softened from confrontation to quiet productivity, yet I knew Margaret and Caroline would not surrender so easily. My fears proved well-founded that evening at 8 o'clock. A lengthy text message arrived from Caroline, full of emotional manipulation and blame. She accused me of betraying our family and threatened to storm my design studio and spread slander to my clients if I refused to pay them a cash settlement. My fingers grew cold reading the threats. Barely 4 hours after leaving my villa, they were already weaponizing my livelihood to blackmail me into compliance. Elias immediately forwarded the screenshot to our attorney. I will arrange permanent security at the studio, and notify all clients to contact legal representation if Margaret or Caroline approach them with false claims. Their threats constitute commercial defamation, carrying heavy financial penalties. Samuel elaborated on the legal ramifications. Harassing a business and spreading lies to damage client relationships rises to severe commercial tort liability. Police intervention and fines are on the table if they follow through. Olivia pledged full cooperation from her team. All staff will film any disturbance and alert property security and local police immediately. We won't let them disrupt our operations. I sent a concise, unyielding reply to Caroline. All evidence from today's confrontation is securely archived. If you or Margaret harass my studio or clients, I will file police reports and civil lawsuits without hesitation. I will not provide any further financial compensation. Our attorney will contact you tomorrow to finalize the written apology agreement. I blocked Caroline's phone number and muted all messages from Margaret's social media accounts, cutting off their direct lines of harassment. As night fell over Nashville, we split tasks. Samuel organized the full evidence file for our lawyer, Elias coordinated studio security arrangements, and Olivia and I revised the estate design drafts. Staring at the city lights outside the window, I thought back to the desperate girl on Madison Avenue 9 years ago, unable to imagine I would one day own a thriving business, a loyal partner, and friends ready to defend me with legal force. Blood was innate, but genuine love and support were a choice, and my mother and sister had chosen nothing but exploitation and malice for nearly a decade. Elias noticed my distant gaze and squeezed my hand. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking of how trapped I felt back then. I smiled faintly, the darkness lifted from my expression. I'm glad I never gave up on design. I'll stand beside you through every storm from now on, he promised. We can plan the wedding entirely without them, we won't send them invitations of any kind. I agreed wholeheartedly, resolved to invite only supportive friends, studio staff, and loyal clients to our ceremony, free of their toxicity. Samuel closed his notebook and prepared to leave for the evening. Our attorney will reach out to Margaret tomorrow morning to negotiate the apology paperwork, and I'll attend the meeting as witness support. Call me day or night if they retaliate in any way. I walked him to the door to express my gratitude. Thank you for standing by me all these years, and for testifying today. I promised to help you the day I watched her mistreat you. Samuel smiled gently. We're friends, no thanks needed. Reach out anytime trouble arises. After seeing Samuel off, Olivia gathered her design prints and departed, reiterating that the entire team would back me if Margaret and Caroline targeted the studio. Only Elias and I remained in the quiet villa, listening to our synchronized breathing beneath the city's glow. He led me to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the neighborhood. Would you like to delay wedding planning until this conflict fully resolves? He asked gently, concerned their harassment would ruin our celebration. I shook my head firmly. I've looked forward to this wedding for too long to let their cruelty delay it. We'll implement all safety precautions and move forward as planned. Whatever you decide, he pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. I will eliminate every risk to protect our special day. At that moment, the landline telephone on the bar rang sharply, an unusual late-night call, and I instantly knew who was on the other line. Elias crossed to answer the receiver, his jaw tightening as he listened to the voice on the line. Harsh, shrill accusations drifted across the room, loud enough for me to hear fragments of Margaret's ranting. Put Leah on the phone right now. How can you threaten to sue your own mother over a trivial argument? Caroline collapsed from distress after today's fight, her blood pressure spiking. You owe us financial compensation to calm her down, or I'll march straight to your design studio tomorrow and tell every client your shameful secrets. I felt no sympathy, only weary amusement. They'd left my villa in perfect health 6 hours prior, inventing a fake medical emergency to manipulate me into paying them off. Elias responded in a steady, unshaken tone, unmoved by her manufactured hysteria. We hold complete audio, photographic, text, and witness evidence of your defamation and threats. You are welcome to visit the studio, but every false statement you make will result in a commercial defamation lawsuit and civil fines. Our attorney will present the formal apology agreement tomorrow morning, refuse to sign, and we file suit immediately, with no further negotiations. This is a family matter, you're an outsider with no right to interfere. Margaret screamed, dropping her performative sorrow for unbridled rage. Leah's income belongs to our family, and I'm entitled to financial support. You're throwing your wealth around to bully us. Family bonds do not justify persistent slander and financial exploitation, Elias countered calmly. Leah holds full legal authority over her own assets, with no obligation to fund you and Caroline indefinitely. The recordings of your overnight plot to extort a dowry and fabricate lies will hold up in court, and judges will dismiss your claims of family business. Margaret paused, shifting to a weak, pleading tone to manipulate him. I raised her for 20 years, I deserve some gratitude. We only ask for $50,000 to cover Caroline's emotional distress, and we'll sign the apology and leave you alone forever. $50,000 was a trivial sum relative to my studio's annual revenue, yet I knew paying would set a precedent for endless future extortion. 9 years of compromise had proven that kindness only fueled their greed. Elias rejected the demand without hesitation. Not a single dollar of compensation will be offered. The only path to settlement is signing the public retraction and agreeing to all anti-harassment clauses. There are no other bargaining points. Fine, if you refuse to pay, I'll leak fabricated stories to every local news outlet. Margaret snarled. I'll claim you abandoned your family to chase a rich man and spread lies about your personal life. Your consulting firm and design studio will both suffer public backlash. Her threat crossed an unforgivable line, and Elias's voice turned cold. Knowingly publishing false information to damage our businesses constitutes severe reputational harm, carrying both civil compensation and potential criminal penalties. We will release our full body of evidence to every media contact alongside your fabricated allegations, and the public will see exactly who has acted maliciously here. Silence hung on the other end of the line for a long stretch before Margaret slammed the phone down with a furious crash. Elias set the receiver back on its cradle, smoothing the crease between my brows with his thumb. She's only bluffing. Media outlets verify claims before publishing, and our complete evidence will dismantle every false story she tries to spread. She'll only damage her own reputation in the process. All these years I've sent them regular payments to help our family, and I'm still nothing more to them than an ATM machine to exploit and defame. I sighed, a cold hollow feeling settling in my chest. Your kindness was never the flaw, their ingratitude and greed are. Elias pulled me into his embrace. From tomorrow onward, all communication will run exclusively through our attorney. You will never need to face her hostility directly again. I thought back to years of unending requests, Caroline's designer handbags, full home renovations for Margaret, all-expense vacations for my sister, every cost covered out of my pocket. I'd clung to the idea of blood loyalty for far too long, blind to how my generosity had spoiled Caroline and emboldened Margaret's control over my life. "I'd like Samuel to join the attorney's meeting tomorrow," I told Elias. "He's the only living witness to what happened at Madison Avenue 9 years ago, and his presence will stop her from twisting the truth." Of course, Elias pulled out his phone to text Samuel, who quickly confirmed he would attend the morning negotiation. The night air whistled against the villa's windows as darkness deepened. Elias suggested hot cocoa to ease my frayed nerves, and we returned to the kitchen where our brutal confrontation had unfolded hours earlier, now bathed in soft, peaceful warmth. The champagne set still sat untouched on the marble bar, saved for a quiet celebration once this entire ordeal finally ended. He handed me a warm mug of cocoa, its heat chasing the chill from my fingertips. Leaning against the counter side by side, we discussed wedding plans, pushing Margaret and Caroline's threats temporarily from our minds. "I've found a lakeside manor venue outside town for the ceremony," Elias explained. "The lawn overlooks the water, and we can design the entire space through your studio in your signature vintage style. Our guest list will only include studio staff, close friends, and long-term loyal clients. No invitations for Margaret or Caroline." "That's perfect," I breathed in relief. "I don't want to spend my wedding day worrying about them staging another scene. I've already booked a full security team to patrol the manor entrances on the wedding day to block them from entering uninvited," he continued. "We can take a honeymoon across Europe afterward to escape Nashville's drama entirely." Listening to his thorough, thoughtful plans to shield my peace, I fully understood what a genuine partner should be, someone who never forces me to shoulder my family's cruelty alone, building safety nets to block every possible source of harm. Mid-conversation, a social media friend request popped up on my phone screen, sent by Lena, one of Caroline's high school friends. Her message read, "Caroline's heartbroken over how you've treated her and your mom. Can we meet up to fix this family rift?" I instantly recognized Margaret's scheme to send a mutual acquaintance to pressure me with emotional manipulation. Elias glanced at the screen and shook his head. "Decline the request. They're using shared friends to push the family-first narrative and make you second-guess yourself, trapping you in endless mental exhaustion." I hit reject and muted all social media notifications to block further outside interference from their circle. Their tactics are predictable: unannounced visits, threatening texts, recruiting mutual friends to guilt-trip me, media blackmail, and studio harassment. We hold legal countermeasures for every single one, and they have no leverage left to use against me. The only hold they ever had over you was your lingering attachment to family. Elias brushed strands of wind-tousled hair from my face. "Now that you see their true nature, that power is broken. Focus on your studio, our wedding, and our life together. Don't waste emotional energy on them anymore." By 11 o'clock that night, we finished our nightly routine and retreated to the upstairs bedroom. I tossed and turned beneath the covers, replaying the kitchen fight and Margaret's late-night phone threat alongside the painful Madison Avenue memories from 9 years ago. Elias sensed my restlessness, wrapping his arms around me and recounting stories from his own difficult early career to distract my racing thoughts. His low, gentle voice slowly relaxed my tense muscles, and I finally slipped into a shallow sleep. Dawn broke early the next morning, painting soft peach streaks across the sky. I descended the stairs to find Elias already in the kitchen, on a call with our legal team outlining every detail of the upcoming mediation meeting. He smiled softly when he spotted me. "Our lawyer has arrived at the downtown cafe for negotiations, and Samuel will be there in 30 minutes. Margaret and Caroline left their house 10 minutes ago to meet us." I ate a quick breakfast and changed into a sharp-tailored blazer, resolved to attend the mediation in person. Elias hesitated, worried seeing the pair would reopen old emotional wounds, but I insisted on witnessing every word exchanged. We drove through Nashville's quiet morning streets, sunlight filtering through the car windows to wrap me in warmth. Staring at the pedestrians on the sidewalk, I swore I would not cave to emotional blackmail or pleas for mercy during the meeting, no more concessions to their endless greed and slander. We parked outside a downtown cafe and spotted Margaret and Caroline seated by the front window, deliberately arranging crumpled tissues on the table to put on a display of suffering. Samuel and our attorney sat across from them, buried in our bound evidence folder. As Elias and I approached the table, Caroline shot me a venomous glare and raised her voice loud enough for every cafe patron to listen in. How can you bring a lawyer to confront your own mother and sister after yesterday's fight? How can you be so cruel? Margaret joined her dramatic performance, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. All I ask is a small financial settlement for 20 years of raising you, and we'll sign the apology and leave you alone. Do you intend to drive your own family to ruin? Our attorney cut through their theatrics without preamble, opening the thick file of evidence on the table. The soft rustle of paper felt like a final verdict in the noisy cafe. Margaret's grip tightened around her tissue, her anger masked by a fake show of grief. Caroline slammed her coffee mug down hard enough to slosh dark liquid across the saucer. Is this how you treat your mother, treating a family dispute like a corporate lawsuit? She demanded. The attorney pushed his glasses higher on his nose, his tone calm and authoritative. This meeting is only for voluntary settlement talks. If you refuse to negotiate reasonably, we will skip mediation and file formal civil complaints. All evidence will be presented publicly in court, and a permanent judgment will be recorded on public record. The word lawsuit deflated Caroline's rage instantly. She glanced nervously at Margaret, panic flickering across her face. Margaret sipped her coffee slowly, buying time to rebuild her manipulative script, the exact delay tactic she'd used 9 years ago at the talent agency before attacking my dreams. I recognized every tell, every calculated pause she used to twist conversations in her favor. After a long, tense silence, Margaret set her mug down and put on a weary, defeated tone. This is just a minor mother-daughter argument, attorney. Every family bickers. I only spoke harshly because I worry for her safety out in the world. Dragging this to court will embarrass all of us. She deliberately framed years of targeted slander and financial extortion as trivial household squabbling, attempting to use our blood bond to erase the legal weight of her crimes. 9 years prior, this performance had left me drowning in self-blame, convinced I was an ungrateful, rebellious child for wanting my own life. Today, sunlight streamed through the cafe window onto our evidence file, and Elias's knee pressed gently against mine beneath the table, a quiet, steady anchor beside me. Samuel and our attorney sat ready to testify, and I was no longer the lonely, vulnerable girl from Madison Avenue. I stood firmly in control of my own narrative. The attorney slid a full spreadsheet of 9 years of bank transfers across the table toward Margaret. These documents tally 47 separate cash transfers to you from Leah over 3 years, totaling $114,300, each labeled with excuses for Caroline's shopping, home renovations, and travel expenses. Would you like us to review each line item one by one? Margaret's eyes widened as she scanned the rows of dated transactions. She'd never imagined I'd preserved every single receipt and bank slip from years of extortion. She sent that money voluntarily. Caroline blurted out defensively, her voice wavering with insecurity. She makes more than us, so it's only right she supports our family. Most of the cash covered household costs, not just me. The attorney pulled up screenshots of Caroline's social media posts alongside matching credit card statements for Margaret. Your public posts show 37 separate luxury designer bag and high-end resort purchases during the same transfer periods. Margaret's credit bills are almost exclusively high-end beauty salon and boutique charges. Shall we print these images to review together? Dead silence fell over the cafe. Caroline's cheeks burned bright red, unable to utter a single retort, while Margaret's knuckles whitened around her coffee mug. Elias brushed my knee gently under the table, wordlessly checking that I remained composed. I offered him a faint, reassuring smile, recalling how he'd shielded me from Margaret's grasp back in the villa kitchen the day before. These are just internal family financial exchanges. Margaret clung to her weak argument, her voice growing hoarse. Leah owes me filial support as my daughter, and helping her younger sister is common decency. Can the law really regulate normal family money transfers? Samuel finally spoke, his measured legal tone cutting through her deflection. This is not mutual, equal family support, it is long-term one-sided financial control enforced through persistent emotional threats. I witnessed firsthand 9 years ago how you blackmailed her with reputational damage to force her into a career she hated, and you've repeated that pattern every time you demanded money since. This qualifies as emotional and financial coercion under civil law. I thought back to the scrap of paper Samuel had slipped into my trembling palm all those years ago at the talent agency, choosing quiet support over public confrontation to avoid worsening my precarious living situation. 9 years later, his quiet kindness had become the critical testimony dismantling Margaret's lies. Margaret's gaze darted away from Samuel's steady stare, fixating on the printed bank slips as if they burned to touch. You're all colluding against us. This Samuel man is her secret lover of 9 years. Elias, you're being deceived. They've been having an affair behind your back this entire time. Enough. The single word left my mouth calm and steady, no tremor or rage coloring my voice. Margaret, Caroline, and even our attorney froze, all eyes snapping toward me. I pushed my chair back and stood, resting both palms flat on the table, leaning forward to look directly down at Margaret's tense, aged face. 9 years ago, 3 miles south of this cafe at the Madison Avenue Talent Agency, you crumpled my design career offer, dug your nails into my wrist, and spread fabricated rumors of secret relationships to force me into clerical work to fund Caroline. I was 22 then, with only $2,300 in my bank account, unable to afford 3 months' rent on my own. You knew I had no power to resist, and you exploited that vulnerability without mercy. I paused, letting my words sink into the silent cafe as every nearby patron listened intently. For 9 years following that day, you requested cash payments every 2 to 3 months, ranging from $500 to $12,000, totaling $114,300 in full. I complied with nearly every demand. If I hesitated even a single day, you repeated that 9-year-old lie about my secret lover to shame and intimidate me, more than 50 separate times. I endured all of it quietly, terrified you would ruin my fledgling design business with gossip. Last October, Caroline tailed Elias and me on our dates and took surveillance photos. The second she saw his luxury vehicle and custom clothing, you two stayed up all night plotting to destroy our engagement and extort a massive dowry from him. We hold a full audio recording of that conversation, right here in this folder. Would you like me to play it for the entire cafe to hear? Caroline's face drained of all color, her head falling to stare at her cold coffee mug, trapped with nowhere to hide. I lifted myself back into my chair, sipping my bitter black coffee slowly, every cold sip sharpening my clarity. You have 2 choices, I restated my ultimatum plainly. First, sign the public apology agreement, promising never to harass my studio, clients, or myself, and renounce all future financial demands. Second, our attorney files civil lawsuits against you both for defamation, emotional coercion, and stalking, and a judge will deliver a binding court judgment to settle this permanently. Leah. Margaret's eyes flooded with genuine tears this time, her voice breaking. I stayed up all night with you when you spiked a fever to 40 degrees as a child. I marched into your high school to defend you when classmates bullied you. Have you forgotten every kind thing I ever did for you? I have never forgotten. A faint tremor softened my tone, recalling those rare gentle childhood memories that had kept me clinging to hope for so long. Those moments were real, which is why I endured 9 years of cruelty and exploitation from you. I kept hoping you would one day ask how hard my work was, or how lonely I felt, but every single phone call from you opened with a request for money. To you, I exist solely to fund Caroline's endless luxury spending. Tears streak down Margaret's foundation-covered cheeks, leaving pale streaks in her makeup. I only spoiled Caroline because she's fragile and can't support herself without me. I was scared I'd pass away and leave her with no one to provide for her. So you forced me to spend my life supporting her instead? I asked simply, no malice in my tone, only quiet confusion. You built this cycle of dependency by giving her everything she wanted at my expense, then told me I had to sacrifice my happiness to sustain it. The cafe remained utterly silent, other diners abandoning their meals to watch our exchange. The barista paused mid-wipe on his espresso wand, steam hissing unused from the machine. Margaret had no response to my question, her mouth falling shut without a word to defend herself. I will not continue the monthly financial support I've provided for 9 years, I reaffirmed, glancing at our attorney to confirm my statement was documented. I will send small, thoughtful holiday gifts out of basic familial courtesy, but all large, mandatory cash handouts end today. Samuel slid the 2-page settlement agreement across the table toward Margaret and Caroline, every clause clearly outlined, public apology requirements, permanent anti-harassment rules, and steep monetary penalties for any violations. Just sign it, Mom, Caroline mumbled suddenly, her voice hollow and defeated. She twisted the edge of the tablecloth between her fingers, all her earlier rage gone, replaced by exhausted despair. If we go to court, we could face huge fines. I don't want a civil judgment on my permanent record. Margaret stared at her youngest daughter in stunned betrayal. Do you realize signing means we'll never get another dollar from her again? I know, Caroline nodded, her eyes red and glistening. But it's clear she won't back down. I can't risk the legal consequences. Civil defamation charges do not carry jail time, Samuel clarified gently, but the court-ordered compensation and public apology will create severe financial and reputational damage for both of you. This settlement agreement offers far more lenient terms than a judge would impose. Margaret's gaze flickered between the legal paperwork and Caroline's tear-streaked face, trapped with no escape. For a split second, compassion stirred in my chest at the sight of her aged, defeated features, but a fleeting flash of bitter resentment in her eyes erased all mercy. Even in complete defeat, she harbored hatred for me for escaping her control. I'll sign. Margaret grabbed the pen, pressing down so hard the ink dug deep into the paper, her signature slanted and sharp with suppressed fury. Caroline's hands shook violently as she signed, her messy script unrecognizable from the neat cursive she posted online for social media photos. She tossed the pen onto the marble table with a sharp clatter once finished. Our attorney reviewed both signatures and placed one copy of the fully executed agreement into a sealed legal folder. This settlement takes immediate effect. You must submit a draft of your public written apology within 72 hours for our review, which you will post to your personal social media accounts for a minimum of 90 consecutive days. Any breach of the agreement terms will trigger automatic financial penalties, with no further negotiation opportunities. Margaret stood rigidly, her skirt catching on the chair leg and tearing slightly as she pulled free. She did not glance back at me as she walked toward the door, Caroline trailing silently behind her without a single backward glance. The cafe's entry bell jingled as they stepped outside, their figures vanishing into the downtown foot traffic. I closed my eyes as the weight of 9 years of constant oppression lifted from my chest, light and strange after so long of carrying it. Every cafe sound amplified around me, espresso steam, clinking mugs, distant car tires, and the steady thud of my own heartbeat. Are you all right? Elias's warm voice pulled me back to the moment, his palm covering mine on the table. I opened my eyes to meet his amber-hued gaze, sunlight gilding the edges of his face with soft warmth. I'm okay, my throat felt scratchy, clearing it lightly. It was easier than I expected it would be. Samuel pushed a duplicate copy of the signed agreement toward me for safekeeping. Keep this for your personal records, our legal team will store the original documents. We finally put that 9-year-old witness statement to use today. I stared at Margaret's jagged signature on the page, a quiet, bittersweet laugh bubbling up inside me, relief after a grueling 9-year journey of struggle and silence. Thank you, for everything. No need for thanks. Samuel packed his notebook and tailored blazer over his arm, a faint understanding smile tugging at his lips as he glanced at Elias's hand intertwined with mine. Send me your wedding date once it's set. I'm ready to retell my witness statement at the ceremony if needed. I laughed genuinely for the first time all day. We won't require witness testimony at the reception, but a seat at the head table is reserved for you. Samuel and our attorney departed the cafe shortly after, leaving only Elias and me alone at the window table. He took both of my hands in his, brushing his thumb over the permanent callus on my index finger from years of gripping design pencils, a silent, physical mark of all the work that had set me free. We can take the rest of the afternoon off after this, he suggested softly. Would you like to walk somewhere to clear your head? I nodded, an unexpected destination forming in my mind. I want to go to Madison Avenue. He did not press me for an explanation, simply grabbing his car keys. The drive to Madison Avenue took 15 minutes on quiet Sunday morning streets, storefronts still shuttered before opening hours. I parked at a street meter and stood on the sidewalk, scanning the neighborhood after 9 years of absence. The old bookstore had swapped its dark green awning for navy blue canvas, while the corner bakery remained, its wooden windows replaced with floor-to-ceiling glass. The low-rise talent agency office building still stood in its original spot, its yellow tile facade faded by nearly a decade of rain and sun. I approached the glass front door, peering through the frosted sticker to see the space transformed into a small art gallery lined with abstract canvas paintings and soft accent lighting. I lingered at the door, replaying the horrific afternoon 9 years prior, crumpled paper stuck to my shirt, Margaret's fingernails digging into my wrist, strangers staring with judgment and pity as I stood helpless and alone with only $2,300 to my name, trapped between surrender and ruin. This is the place. Elias's gentle voice sounded from behind me, giving me space to process my memories without rushing me forward. It is, I replied quietly. I cried on the sidewalk here for 5 minutes that day, then bought a croissant from the bakery across the street and sat on the steps to decide I'd pretend to take the clerical job while secretly saving money to start my studio. Was the croissant good? He asked lightly, easing the heavy weight of my memories. I huffed a soft laugh. I can't remember the taste. I'd swallowed so much air crying my stomach felt bloated, full of grief instead of pastry. Elias stepped close, sunlight framing his silhouette in golden light as he brushed wind-blown strands of hair from my face. What's filling your stomach now, instead of sorrow? Empty space, finally, I exhaled deeply. Like a wall I've been carrying for 9 years has fallen down, letting fresh air circulate at last. He smiled warmly. There's an Italian restaurant nearby with incredible tiramisu to fill that empty space. Let's go. I took his arm, walking side by side down the tree-lined avenue as autumn wind carried bakery butter aromas through the air, distant church bells ringing slow and soft. For the first time in nearly a decade, I walked the same sidewalk without fear, free to breathe without a weight pressing against my heart. We returned to my lakeside villa by 4 in the afternoon. Olivia's design renderings for the luxury estate lay spread across the living room coffee table. I changed into comfortable loungewear and settled cross-legged on the sofa to review drafts while Elias brewed coffee in the open kitchen, the low hum of the espresso machine creating calm background noise. I'd swapped the Persian rug planned for the living room. I marked the page with a pencil. The client prefers warm neutral tones, and the current red pattern clashes too sharply with the home's exterior. A custom pink-beige blended weave would match perfectly, with a 6 to 8 week production timeline to align with construction completion. Elias carried 2 mugs of coffee to the couch, sliding mine toward my dominant hand. Will the dimensions fit the living area? We'll order a fully custom cut. I sipped the rich, nutty brew he'd prepared. Olivia mentioned the client wants to add built-in custom bookshelves to the study. I'll hash out the details with the design team tomorrow at the studio. I returned to sketching minor palette adjustments, the familiar scratch of pencil on paper a constant comfort after 9 years of design work. Elias flipped through the legal addendums left by our attorney while I drafted color revisions, the quiet peace of the room a stark contrast to the brutal kitchen fight 2 days prior. Bright, unconfined silence instead of a suffocating vacuum filled with malice. Around 5 o'clock, my work email pinged with an urgent client cancellation notice. I tapped open the unfamiliar sender's message, reading 3 short paragraphs carefully. After learning details regarding your personal character, we have decided to cancel our upcoming full home interior design contract. No further explanation will be provided. I instantly recognized Margaret's distinctive manipulative phrasing. Her words filtered through an anonymous third party to bypass our settlement agreement's direct harassment ban. Elias glanced at my screen and sighed softly. Olivia mentioned the studio received 2 anonymous calls about your background this morning, he explained. We prepped staff responses in advance, but this client chose to pull out regardless. It's only one client, easily replaced. I set my phone face down on the coffee table, refusing to dwell on the setback. Our long-term loyal clients have years of trust in our work and won't be swayed by unsubstantiated gossip. Olivia can send a polite follow-up email tomorrow attaching our portfolio and client testimonials. Elias shifted my phone to the far edge of the table and sat beside me, our knees touching lightly. I'll come with you to the studio tomorrow to oversee security protocols. Won't your consulting projects require travel? I asked. My major Atlanta client negotiations are wrapping up, so I can handle most work remotely for the next few weeks, he said firmly. I want to stay close while Margaret and Caroline may retaliate. I nodded in agreement, grateful for his unwavering support through every conflict. After dinner, Samuel sent a text update on Margaret and Caroline's activity that day. They'd posted no slanderous content on social media and had not violated any settlement terms since signing, though he warned further retaliation remained likely. I sent a short thank you reply and muted my phone notifications as night fell over Nashville, amber city light washing out faint starlight above the treetops. Elias typed out business emails at the dining table, laptop blue light softening his focused features as I stared out the floor-to-ceiling window at the rustling maple trees in our yard. A dull, lingering ache sat in my chest, the 9 years of constant pressure slowly releasing, leaving a strange, tender soreness in its wake. My phone vibrated again minutes later, a work message from Olivia popping up on screen. A sealed anonymous envelope was left at the studio front desk today addressed to you. Reception locked it in the safe unopened. Should I photograph it for you or wait until tomorrow for you to open in person? I immediately recognized Margaret and Caroline's tactic of anonymous written threats, a trick they'd used occasionally throughout the years. Where once an unmarked letter would spark sleepless anxiety, I responded calmly. Leave it locked safely until I arrive tomorrow morning, do not open it or touch the seal. I set my phone aside and returned to the window, watching maple leaves twist down through the twilight. Tomorrow held studio meetings, the mysterious envelope, client correspondence, and wedding design planning, but tonight I allowed myself to rest, untroubled by the coming day's challenges. I closed my eyes, listening to wind rustle tree leaves, Elias's quiet keyboard taps, and my own slow, steady breathing. All tomorrow's troubles could wait until sunrise. The following morning at 9, I arrived at the Gulch studio. Floor-to-ceiling glass display windows showcased our latest neoclassical interior project, cream and light grey textiles glowing in the autumn sunlight. Olivia met me at the reception desk, passing over a safe key with a quiet warning. I checked the building security footage last night. A thin woman wearing a baseball cap dropped the envelope in the mail slot and ran off within 10 seconds. Her face was hidden completely. I unlocked my private office safe and pulled out a plain brown craft envelope printed with Caroline's recognizable rounded handwriting, Leah Hamilton, personal and confidential. I sliced the seal with a letter opener to pull out 2 crumpled notebook pages covered in ink smudges from repeated hesitation mid-writing. The opening line caught me off guard. "Sis, I stayed awake all night last night without telling Mom I'm writing this. I've been thinking about that summer 9 years ago. Were you the one who bought me ice cream that evening?" Memories of that sweltering July flooded back instantly. 3 months after the Madison Avenue talent agency incident, I'd been working the clerical job by day and pulling late freelance design shifts, handing most of my paycheck over to Margaret. I'd run into Caroline outside a convenience store after overtime, watching her eat cheap convenience store soft-serve ice cream, embarrassed to be seen without her usual expensive artisanal waffle cones. Without a word, I'd bought 2 premium ice cream servings for us to share on the sidewalk, vanilla for me, strawberry for her. I'd assumed she'd long forgotten such a trivial, unremarkable moment of quiet kindness. Dark ink blots dotted the page where Caroline had paused repeatedly while writing her note. I found an old photo on my private phone album last night from that evening, me grinning with my strawberry cone, half your face visible beside me eating vanilla. I posted a private memory note back then that I later deleted to avoid Mom scolding me for growing attached to you. Looking at the photo last night, I realized you weren't as cruel as Mom always said you were. There was no formal apology, no promise to stop manipulating or demanding money, only a single fragmented, clumsy memory buried in 2 crumpled notebook pages, dropped anonymously at my studio front desk. I refolded the letter and placed it into my desk drawer alongside the 9-year-old crumpled design offer letter, my first client contracts, and well-worn interior design color manuals. I closed the drawer securely, and Olivia knocked at my office door to alert me our weekly design team meeting was set to begin, handing over the draft reply to our cancelled client email for my review. I joined 6 designers around our long conference table, sunlight filtering through window blinds in thin parallel streaks. I led our project progress review, walking through 4 active renovation builds, 2 newly signed high-end residential contracts, and 1 upcoming luxury client consultation. The team debated fabric and paint palette details for over an hour, the mundane, meticulous work of design filling me with a quiet sense of stability no family conflict could disrupt. After the meeting wrapped, Olivia lingered to discuss the client cancellation email draft she'd prepared, polite, factual, with links to our portfolio and glowing past client reviews, no desperation or unnecessary pleading. "We have 3 new wealthy property owners waiting to book consultations if this client moves forward with another firm," she reassured me, glancing toward the studio's front windows. "The maple tree outside the entrance has lost dozens of leaves overnight. Autumn's fully settled in now." I glanced out at the golden foliage scattered across the sidewalk, autumn's crisp dry air drifting through the open front door. Later that afternoon, a text arrived from Samuel updating me on Caroline's movements. She'd met a young woman at the downtown cafe for 30 minutes that morning, sitting alone afterwards staring blankly at her table with no aggressive or threatening behavior. I read the message without replying, returning to sorting fabric swatches and finalizing color palettes for the estate renovation. Some small seeds of doubt had planted themselves in Caroline's mind, though I could not predict if they would ever bloom into genuine remorse. For now, I focused fully on my career, letting time handle the rest. Elias pulled up outside the studio at closing time as streetlights flickered on across the gulch, thin layers of fallen maple leaves carpeting the sidewalk, sweet butter aromas drifting from the nearby bakery as it closed for the day. I locked the studio front door and slid into the passenger seat, resting back against the heated leather seats. "How was your day?" Elias asked, glancing over at me as he pulled away from the curb. "Steady and calm, all studio projects on track, the client email finalized, team meeting productive," I replied. "How about your consulting work?" "I had a preliminary call with a new Atlanta client this morning, likely a short business trip next week," he explained. I can reschedule if you need support around the studio. No need to delay your travel plans, I shook my head. I can manage everything here independently now. Elias reached over to gently squeeze my hand resting on my knee before returning both hands to the steering wheel, a small, tender gesture cutting through the lingering tension of the past 2 days. Mellow jazz trumpet music hummed from the car speakers as we cruised past the Gulch storefronts, warm neon orange light glowing from our favorite Italian restaurant at the intersection. Shall we stop there for dinner tomorrow evening? Elias followed my line of sight to the restaurant sign. Perfect, I smiled faintly. I want 2 servings of tiramisu. A quiet, genuine laugh rumbled in his chest. 2 tiramisus it is. The restaurant's neon glow shrank into a tiny dot in the rearview mirror as we turned onto the highway leading home, streetlights stretching ahead in a warm golden ribbon beneath Nashville's darkening sky. I closed my eyes against the seat, letting the soft trumpet melody and quiet engine hum calm my thoughts. Tomorrow's worries could wait. Tonight, the air smelled of autumn bakery butter, the car was warm, and a restaurant serving perfect tiramisu waited just down the street.